Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Remember that all concepts in the Quran are neutral until you assign them a position of morality, immorality, amorality. When we look out at the world, we see it through the eyes of either moral or immoral, or sometimes amoral, neither.
Mm.
But in reality, they all begin as neutral. That's everything in the universe is neutral. That's the same as saying that everything in the world is natural. That's the best explanation for the word neutral. Just substitute it for natural. Well, when you say the natural world, you can also say the neutral world.
Mm.
And that neutral world doesn't become significant until you assign it a value. So if a person falls off of a tall building and hits his head, or as they would say, unalives himself, if he jumps and he unalives himself, that's not nature. That's not gravity doing something immoral to him. That's the processes of nature. It's built into nature. It's inherent in the fitrah that that person hit his head a certain, way and velocity and all of that. You're adding up all the velocity times speed times whatever, and he unalives himself. It doesn't mean he was a bad person. He could have been pushed, right? It means that the universe itself, the entire cosmos, begins and ends with neutrality. Neutrality until you assign or someone else assigns it a value, meaning I think that was bad. I think that was wrong. Or I think that was a good thing that he did. Somebody shot somebody. That was a good thing because that guy was a nuisance. You hear all of these conversations right now online it kind of shows you how immature many people in this world actually are. That's a sign of immaturity. But we place these values. When the Ku Klux Klan had their heyday back in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even in the 70s and even to not today to a degree, the people's mentalities are still ruling certain cities and certain towns. All right. Their idea of what is moral is not your idea of what is moral because morals differ. I heard Imam W.D. Muhammad say once that there's no such thing as morality, but there's such a thing as decency. So you can say this was a decent thing to do. You can even apply that to animals. You might see a dog steal something from another dog, and deprive his family of the food. Yeah, you might say that's kind of indecent of that dog. But that's just the nature of dogs and of animals and wolves and sheep and other, these creatures are neutral until you apply a level of value to them. So I needed to say that because it's going to play into what these letters actually are. My plan for today in a very short amount of time is to introduce you to the next level of Nunetics. All of this time we've been dealing basically with the first level. You're about to graduate now to the second level of Nunetics as an expression of language. Language, as we know, is represented through a combination of sounds coming from the mouth that are repeated over and over again in a way that would suggest that they have meanings. It's only suggesting that they have meanings because of the way the human brain is able to digest sounds and do its best to make sense of sounds. So if I say book and you think about a manual or something that you open up and that you begin to read from, if you can read that language, The only real thing there is the book. What it is you're thinking about the book is your own fabrication. I could have a sound alike word in another language that means something totally different. The word book and back sound kind of alike, but they don't mean the same thing, right? So I want you to see how language is added to in order for it to mean a particular thing. And what makes the difference between the words that are in the Quran and the words that we use as common lingo, common language, the difference is that Allah's words are being extracted from the fitrah itself. And Allah is making the application. He's the one who is doing the applying of the meaning of the word. And that's what makes the Quranic language above and beyond your ordinary human language or communication. Because in order to understand the meaning, you have to go into the fitrah. And the fitrah, these are notes that I need for you to remember. I'm going to send this to you, so don't worry about taking note for word or anything like that. But the fitrah is full of attributes. Sound familiar? The fitrah is full of attributes. Every letter has attributes. If I say Aleph, and you know that that's connected to the idea of the spine and the spinal cord, then your job is to think about the spine, think about the cord, think about its form and its function. Most of the information will be tied into the function of that form. That's where most of the information is. That's why a child can describe the form of a thing like the sun. You can say, can you draw a sun on this piece of paper? And they just draw a round circle. They might color it yellow, have some rays sticking out of it. And that's as far as they go. And you'll be able to identify it as a sun. Oh, look, my son drew a sun. My son drew a sun, right? But if he has that same 5-year-old or 7-year-old or even 12 and 13 and 17-year-old, how does the sun function? What is the sun made of, gas wise, chemically? What is it made? What's the temperature of the sun? And that sun will say, well, it's a ball of fire. Well, technically, it's not because you need oxygen for fire, and there's no oxygen in the sun or on the sun. So the more you go into the function of a thing, the more sophisticated your understanding of that thing has to be. Follow this logic to its logical conclusion. All right. So what is that saying? It's saying what we've been saying for a very long time about the Quran itself, in other words. You can know the words on the surface. Al-Fatiha, most, if not all of us know that. But we only know it on the surface, just like your child only knows to draw the sun on this as a surface picture. But when you begin to ask your child that same question, what does the sun do? What is the sun chemically speaking? How many rotations are these bodies making around other bodies? It takes a much more sophisticated understanding to be able to explain those things to people who are trying to understand them. It's the same thing with the Quranic language. You can't just give me a surface explanation of what the Quran is. The Quran is from the same source creator that gave us everything else in the cosmos. So you have to treat the Quran not as a normal, regular read along book, not as a regular imam says this and the congregation says that, Ameen. No, that's not what kind of book this is. It's a cosmic frequency that you're reading. And it has a system built into it that allows you to understand more and more as you continue to dedicate yourself more and more to its language. Nobody can do that for you. That's why they say that only Allah can teach you the Quran. Allah says that He is the teacher of the Quran, not Sheikh of Google, not Instructor Bilal, not any instructor or instructress or anybody else who's teaching you what they believe the Quran is saying. We're not the ones teaching you. We're really guessing on the most part because we're not making a reference to the source of that information. The source of that information is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the source of the information. So if you're not going to the source guidance, then you're not going to walk away with a source understanding. You're going to walk away with a school of thought understanding. You're going to walk away with your favorite teacher's understanding. You're going to walk away with an understanding that may have nothing to do at all with the fitrah, but have everything to do with the Wahhabi school or the Maliki school or some other school of thought. It's just a thought from somebody's head. It's just, these are just thoughts that people thought of and decided to tell you and codify it and make it law, but it doesn't make it real. An Arabic word consists on the most part of three parts that we call triconsonantal. Triconsonantal words. That means words that have three consonants. So if I say katiba or kataba, and you've been taught that that's a book, you're right, but you're not complete. Just like that drawing, yes, that's a sun, that's a tree, but it's not a complete description or understanding. So we have, as you know, sounds in language. That's where it begins. Who gave you the sound? Creation. If I clap my hand, that's the universal sound. Who's giving me this sound? The source creator who created these hands. My teacher didn't give it to me, not even my mama gave it to me. When she claps, you get the same sound. When my little baby claps, you get the same sound because Allah is creating the sound. In language, that sound is called a phoneme. 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 So Allah is responsible for the phonemes. He's responsible for what we pronounce as vowels and consonants. Vowels, open-mouthed sounds, and consonants, where the sounds are interrupted by a connection. Every consonant is pronounced because the mouth is able to make connections with itself. If I'm saying T, it's only because my tongue is in contact or making a connection with the back of my two front teeth to say T or to say D. If you say it to yourself right now, T, and then you say D, you can feel a slight difference in the pronunciation of those words, a slight difference. If I leave the vowel out of it, then I'm just going to get the raw sound, what Imam Muhammad once called the soul of the letter. And that would be, in the case of T, it would just be T, 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 no vowel, T. In the case of D, D, just D. Those are the first primal sounds that human beings made, I believe. And then they couple with a vowel sound to make an actual sound. If I add an A to the T, then it becomes ta. If I add an A to the D, then it becomes da, not just d, but da. Now I'm on my way to building a word. Once you understand that each one of those sounds have a meaning that registers in the soul, not in the intellect at first. Those sounds register in the human soul. That's why every baby born begins with the sound of distress. Ah, 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 crying, crying, crying. There's no baby that comes here laughing. None. I don't care what the ethnic group is, what the geography is. Every baby comes with a primal plea coming from the reptilian brain. The plea is for survival. This is a new environment. I don't know what's going on. I was just sleeping on a pillow in, inside there. Why am I out here? And now I need something to survive. I need some more survival tools out here. I need some milk because I didn't have to worry about milk when I was in my mama. I didn't have to worry about safety. None of that was a concern of mine. I was good to go inside my mama. Now that I'm outside here, I got some real concerns. I got some real conversations I need to have with you people out here. I feel threatened. So one of the first emotions that a human baby feels is threat. My mortality is being challenged. How do I live out here? I've been given no instructions. I don't have a booklet. I don't have an instruction manual or anything out here. Yes, you do. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. That is the book. In it is sure guidance without doubt. Did y'all catch that? You do have a book when you get here. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. That is the book. In it is sure guidance without doubt for those who are conscious. Muttaqin. For those who are conscious of their obligations. So you should already be thinking on a level above and beyond what you were taught in the madrasa or in the masjid or the mosque. And for your own sake, stop calling it mosque because it's a play on words. They got that from the French language, from the word mosquito. Mosquito, an irritant. They saw the Muslims as being irritants. They still do in the world, in France. See? So stop calling your places of refuge. That's what they are. Your places of getaway, Earth, Wind and Fire had a song called Get Away, Leave Today. That's all the mosques are. Places of refuge, places where you have to get away, places where you have to walk in saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek a refuge from Satan, and I'm going to step through this door and I'm going to be in heaven temporarily. So we begin with these words from the Quran. The words begin with phonemes, sounds. Those sounds are connected to psychological meanings, just like the open A cry of that newborn baby means distress. Help me. I need something or somebody outside of me to come save me. That's just the first sound that we call a phoneme sound. But there are three parts to each word, at least. Not at the least, pardon me. Some words have two sounds, two consonants. But on the most part, the way we're taught Arabic, they say that Arabic is a triconsonantal root word. three letters. Now, what do these three letters signify is the question. Here's your next level, so pay attention. What do these three levels indicate? They indicate the basic structure of what words mean. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule that applies to every word, but it applies to most words in the Quran. This structure that I'm about to give you. The first part of the word in a three-letter structure word represents a verb. A verb. The second part of a word represents an adjective, something to further describe the word in question. The third part of the word represents the noun. Most of the time, the noun meaning is last. Last. When you are born and your mother begins to feed you from her breast, you know that as an action that this person who looks like this does, but you don't know that that's your mama. You don't know that by language. You don't say, that's my mother. She's my main feeding source. You only know that after she's done it repeatedly, over and because your auntie could have breastfed you. Any lactating woman could have breastfed you. They say the prophet had a wet nurse for times when the mother wasn't available. Anything can happen to the mother. She can die, she can leave, she can give up, she can be frustrated, she can become depressed, and she's just not available. So you have to find somebody else, especially in the days before Similac and Soyalac were invented. You have to find a different way of feeding. So the first is the verb. All verbs are action words. That's technically what the word verb means. Action word. All actions have a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. Because all things that we do as actions have to begin somewhere, they reach a climax, and then they begin to dissipate and disappear, right? If I clap, here's the beginning of it. Here's the middle of it if I'm still clapping. Then that's the conclusion of it. It's an action. I'm speaking to you right now. That's an action. I began at some point. I'm in the middle of what I'm saying. I'm making all of my points and trying to explain, and then I have to conclude that speech. So that verb is actually the same thing as what they tell us when they talk about God in the way I explained it. Generator, operator, dissolver. The one who generates or begins a thing, the thing that operates to its fullest capacity, that's its middle point, and then the thing begins to dissipate or disappear. That's what God is. God is not what they taught us as the source creator. So don't get mad at Christians when they say Jesus is God. That's correct. If you understand what God is, you'd give that Christian what they call an amen. Say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jesus is God. If you understand what God means, it's no skin off of a Muslim's back or a Jew's back if someone says Jesus is God. If you know how to explain it, and because most of us don't know how to explain it, I'd advise you not to say that or agree with it when you hear it, because people will get the wrong idea, because most people have been taught incorrectly about what God means. The people of old from ancient India, the Hindus, and these people and people from other parts of Asia, and those, when they said this is God, they knew what they were talking about. You don't know what they were talking about. When they said Rama is God or Ra, Amun Ra is God, they were right all of the way because they were just talking about forces in nature, not about the source of those forces. I hope you're following me so far. All right. So the first is the verb, the action. The second is the modifier of the action, things that you can add on to further explain what it is you're talking about as an action. The last thing that becomes concrete in the mind is what that thing actually looks like. So you find that out after many months of being around your mother. You find out what mother really means. Let her disappear for a night or two and watch you go crazy. But you can disappear from your infant's life for, for long periods of time. As long as they're being fed and clothed and hugged and given love, and they don't really even miss you, mommy. Because they're in the stage where they have to understand the action. They need to understand who are the actors here. And as long as the actors are doing the things that they immediately need, they're good. But if the child begins to learn what the person is by name and by looks, you look and you see your mama coming from across the street. You say, "That's me." You still hold. You be letting out. They be letting you out of school, and there's 100 mothers there. But you able to look under that whole crowd of 100, and your eyes can beam. Oh, that's my mother. It's my mother's coming. That's the last thing you recognize is the noun mother. First thing you recognize is the action of a mother, but you're not calling her that because you don't know her like that. You only know her actions. The second thing is that you have to add more relevance to the action. My mother is the one who feeds me, but she's also the one who clothes me. She's also the one who comforts me. So you're adding more descriptive value to that particular person until you grow to recognize her as a person, place, thing, or idea. That's what a noun is. Person, place, thing, or even an idea. In Arabic, a noun is also an idea because no thing appears before there's an idea. No child appears on this planet until someone has an idea to create one. Then you have to do certain things to make that a reality. It begins in the imagination. It begins in your image nation. You have to imagine this idea of being a father, being a mother, before it can come into being. And that can be consciously or unconsciously. We won't go into that today. Everything that is here is produced first and foremost in the imagination, even your problems. You say, I didn't ask for that headache. I didn't ask for those problems. Yes, you did. We'll explain that in our future course called Psychology of the Soul Continued. That's going to be a course that if you're anywhere interested in psychology, you better jump on that as soon as I announce it because I'm limiting it to less than 10 people. The Psychology of the Human Soul. I have book 1 out already. If you don't have that, you better go ahead and grab it because book 2 is going to make you not want to read book 1 at all. All right. So, verb, further description of the verb, noun. I think it was Amina that mentioned, I forget who mentioned it. I know somebody mentioned it today about naming the things. I believe it was Amina in our presentation.
Yeah, with the dam.
right? Yeah. So asma is the word that Allah is using when it says that Adam was told or commanded to tell them their names, all of them. Kulliha. Tell them their names. Asma. So who is being spoken to? The so-called angels. Were they here already before they got that command? Yes, that proves that the verb comes before the noun. You see how beautiful this science is of Nunetics? You won't hear that anywhere else. You won't find it anywhere else. That didn't come from somewhere else. That came from inspiration. And Allah took me right to the correct ayat to prove it to you. Tell them their names. Who was he talking to? He was talking to people or forces that were already here. They didn't have, just like your mother is here, but she didn't have, you didn't know her name first before you knew her actions. You see how natural this nunetic science is? It grows right out of nature. So you won't need your Sigmund Freuds and all those other frauds to explain to you what the Fitrah explains to you in simple terms, in simple logic. So the nouns come last. Tell them their nouns. The same word for name is the same word in Arabic for noun. Ism, as Amina so eloquently taught. She didn't just talk, she tell you, she taught that lesson. The ism that gave us communism, capitalism. That's where the English world gets it. Socialism. Why they got all these isms at the end of these words? Because that's the name of that action. Lastly, that Protoroot is produced in the same way that any root for any plant is produced from a seed. The seed is the concept that begins in the imagination. That's where the concept begins. Once you plant that seed, and you can only plant that seed and expect a growth product to come from it only if the other things that that seed needs for its sustenance and its growth and its development are also in place. So you can't just put a seed in some ground. The ground has to be ready for it, prepared for it. The season has to be prepared for it. You plant in the wintertime, you won't get any growth. You'll get what's called the no growth. I believe that's where they got the word Negro from. No grow. No matter where they plant you, there's no growth. You have to decide your season. You can't just let willy-nilly decide for you. So you have to have the right season. You have to have the right atmosphere, the right seasonal conditions. You have to have hydration. There's some seeds that if you water them, if you overwater them, you'll kill them. They won't even, just because they need water doesn't mean that they need excessive water. The snake plant, it doesn't need as much water as if you're planting some other, tulips or something. I don't know, whatever. Some plants are going to need more moisture, more water. And then you're going to have it more than likely in a soil bed. So the soil, the material is important. The water is important. The sunlight is important. And the oxygen, the air is important. So I just named for you all four of the major, right, elements. The land, the soil, the fire, the sunlight, the water, the hydration, and the air, the oxygen. So all four elements are operational in the fitrah. Iblis said, you created me from fire, and you created homeboy over there from clay. Those are all four elements right there. It's just that two are obvious and two are hidden. For the fire part is obvious, but the fact that it needs oxygen to survive is hidden. In the clay, the material part, the land part is obvious, but the water part is hidden because you can't have clay without moisture. Not if it's going to bend and you're going to make things out of it, bricks or whatever you're going to build out of it, or bust or whatever. It needs, you remember in elementary school, they put the big thing of clay in front of you and then they put a little bowl of water so that when you began to shape it, you had to take some of the moisture, some of the water and pour it on the clay. And that's when you can stretch the clay. That's when you can begin to shape or mold the clay. You can't do that with clay that has already hardened. And the word for both types of clay are in the Quran. One is in the word teen, the other one is in the word salsal. S-A-L, S-A-L. Because that's a clay where once it is solidly engineered by the clay maker, if you tap it, it rings. Salsal. If you tap it, bing, like a bell or something else that has hardened as clay, it doesn't matter. You can't just put water on it and begin to reshape it if it's solid, if it has already hardened. That's why they call hardened criminals, because they're very almost impossible to reshape them. That's why they have them breaking rocks in the prison. They know what these things indicate. All of these things from Protoroot, after a plant develops a protoroot, meaning the first emanation or instance that the plant is beginning to grow. You know that because the plant root goes downward, not upward. The first root, the protoroot of a plant, goes downward after you plant it. What's the purpose of it going downward? So that it can wrap itself around different rocks and things to keep it stable. After it gains its stability, it will then send up what are called shoots. S-H-O-O-T-S. Shoots. And it's the shoot that will eventually present itself above the soil. Yeah, when you see it, it's a shoot. You don't see the original roots unless you dig them up. Sometimes the root of a tree will have more underground connections to the soil than it has branches above the soil. Yeah. So you don't see it until it becomes above the ground or above the soil. What does that say about you? The first development in you as a human being is the soul, the soul. For the plant, it's the soil. For the human, it's the soul. And the soul has to first go down before it begins to come up. I think both the Bible and the Quran, or at least the Islamic literature, says about Jesus and also about Muhammad that they first visited hell before visiting paradise or heaven. That's all that's saying. It has nothing to do with anybody going and walking around fire, doing a fire dance before they went to heaven. It has to do with your soul. And that fire is a cleansing agent, it's a purification agent. It's not a bad thing in this instance. Fire represents two things. Listen carefully. Purification, because in order to get pure gold, you have to put it through fire. Purification and transformation. Those are the two things that are necessary for life. When you are attempting to grow yourself as a true human, you have to have those same two things. You first have to be purified. That's what the Muslim world is calling, you know, wudu. The word is not used like that in the Quran, but that's their summation of what is being said. You have to first be purified. Then you have to be transformed. The Bible says out of the mouth of Jesus that he told the people when they asked him, he told them, you must be born again. It's not spooky. That's wisdom. You must be born again. I think he was asking Lazarus or one of those guys. You must be born again. That's transformation. So a lot of what these ancient people were teaching was purification and transformation. When you make your physical ritual salat, you're really looking at a picture of transmutation, change, reordering, or realigning, if you want to use that for religion. These are the things that must be done for us to come into what they call a new life. So all of this is built into the language. And it results, all of the phoneme changes and alterations and transformations, it results in the end with what is called in the Quran an ayah, an instructing sign. The only thing they haven't taught you, because they don't know to teach it to you in your traditional Arabic classes and such, is that when Allah mentions an ayah, he's talking about something that you need to benefit from immediately. You need to be able to see an ayah and benefit from it immediately. If you wait too long, it's like a spoiled piece of food or meat or something, and you can't use it after that. When Allah sends you an instruction, you have to be able to recognize it and utilize it immediately. Because in that recognition is everything from A to Z. And the word ayah are composed of the letters Aleph and yeah, that's it. Ayah. That's all. There's just two letters. So you know it's a proto-root word. It's an original word. It's proto-root. There's only two letters there. If you're thinking about ayat, then that's three letters, but the T is a feminizer. So don't count that. Ayah, singularly speaking, is just Aleph and Ya. And Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Ya is the last letter. That means that an ayah is actually covering everything from A to Z. That's why it takes such study of Quranic ayat. You can't just glance at it and say, oh, yeah, I got it. No, you got to do what we're doing. You got to dig deep and compare the attributes of all of these things that are registering in the mind and in the soul. And that's where Allah is the only one who can teach you. Because who else knows everything from Aleph to Ya except Allah? We don't. So I wanted to say those few things to you as an introduction to this new level of instruction. And the word instructor and instruction simply means internal structure. That's all we're doing as instructors. We're providing internal structure. What is internal? Anything that is mental, anything that is emotional, anything that is even instinctive. Things that you cannot touch with your hands. That's what we call internal. And that's what the Quran is speaking to on the most part. It's not speaking to your body on the most part. In some cases, yes. On the most part, no. That's why these things are not rituals. They are instructions for your internal development, depending on how much you consider them or give them repeated thinking and thoughts and application. You got to do it repeatedly. You can't do it once or twice and think you've done it. You have to do it with a sense of dhikr. There's that dhal letter again. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. فيه, in it. In it, internal. In it. That's how you know Allah is speaking to something internal, not external. That is the book, not this is the book. Forget that translation. Dhalik means that over there, and that over there means that this, whatever this kitab is, it's a measure away from you. It's not where you are yet. You are not where it is, for sure. That book, if I say this book, it means it's right here. I can touch it. I can put my hands on it. I can describe it accurately. But the further away that thing gets from me, the less I'm going to be able to describe it. So when Allah says, Dhalik al-kitab, then it brings a whole new message and meaning to the word kitab. Because as I said, words begin as a proto-root language in Arabic, two word or two consonantal roots. So what you're going to be learning going forward is how to identify the original proto-root word for any word in the Quran. Let me repeat that because that's important. You, from this point on, will be learning and will be tested on the proto-root meanings for Quranic Arabic words. That means I'll be able to say to you, kitab, and you'll be able to I'm going to show you how to automatically know whether that's which two of those letters are proto-root letters and which third letter is an added on what they call radical. Radical doesn't mean Hamas, that kind of radical. They call the Black Panthers radicals. Yeah, no, not that kind of radical. The original meaning for radical is root. That's all a radical is. So they're telling you that the root letter comes next or last or after. And the original meaning of a word is proto-root based. Listen back to this lecture and study what I'm saying. Stop it, take notes. I'm going to give it to you in any way that I can get it. Transcript. I'm going to bring this to you in a lot of different ways that it's going to be your responsibility to remember and to be able to explain back to me. So that third letter is a radical. A radical. R-A-D-I-C-A-L. The R-A-D is the same as the R-O-T in root and in rot. If you don't let the life form do what it's supposed to do, it'll rot on you. A lot of people right now walking around with rotten ideas, thinking that they are right when they're actually just rot. They're not right. They are rot and rotten ideas. That allows them to do some very rotten things. They're all over the political world now. They're all over the economic world. They're all over the political world and they're all over the cultural world, especially. The culture is dry rot right now in America. You're living in a dry rot culture. And you can't just come and sprinkle some water and think it's going to be all right. You have to do what your mama did when her plant started dying on her. She had to pull it up and replant it in new soil. That's what Nunetics is. It's new soil for the soul. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Nawa, and we can close out whenever we need to, unless there are any quick questions. And I hate to even ask that because none of you have quick questions. And I understand. I understand, though. I know I see Bayina with her hand up. I'll let her speak. But I understand why you can't just have quick questions for this level of wisdom because it's new, first of all. And anything new, you got a lot of questions. If not that you're questioning, like you doubt it, but you have to have questions in order to further elaborate. When you go to study on your own, you need some clues in your back pocket. So I was going to give as an example that word kitab. The first thing that you do is you look at the lineup of the letters, the kaf, the ta, the bait. Kaf, ta, bait. KTB, kitab. The first question you ask yourself is, can I find a combination of the kaf and the ta as a separate word, as a biconsonantal or protoroot word in the Quran? Is there such a word as cat? And the answer is going to be no. So that eliminates that all right away. Can I find a word that begins with T and ends with a B? Yes. Tabbat, yadda, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to find the TB connection all throughout the Quran. Not all throughout, but in enough places for you to be satisfied that it forms a word. So that's what you work with. You put the K on the side for a minute because you already know that it means the hand that grasps, right? The hand that grasps. So what are you grasping? Whatever that TB means. And we have that TB in our English language in the word tablet, in the word tab. Add it up for me. Yeah, I know you see it, William, and others, right? So what you're adding up is already in your hands. And once you actually have it, then there's no ribe. There's no ribe. There's no doubt. They say doubt. It really means that there's no exaggeration in it. It doesn't really mean doubt to begin with. It means that in the kitab, and the reason you have it in your hands is because it's your life. The kitab is your life story. We talk about our lives like that. My life is an open book. You've heard that. I'm not talking about some extraneous something that you got to go pick up from the library or rent and give back. It's yours. Your life story is yours. And because it's not based in things that people taught you, it's based in the fitrah of your own nature. That's why there is no raib, no doubt, they call it. I say raib is connected to rob. There's no robbery in this. This book is not trying to rob you. It's trying to give you something, not take something away from you. There's no raiba fihi in it. The way it came to mean doubt is because doubt in its original meaning meant to double a thing. Now look at how we use the word double in English. We say he double talked me. That means he was saying one thing, but he was really indicating something else. Man, what's all this double talk about? No, there's no double talk in the Quran. There's no saying this and then meaning something else. That's not how Allah communicates. That's how we communicate because we need things, we want things from people. So there's a lot of doubt in what we do. But the double talk is on our part. And that's the challenge of the human mind and the human soul, to get rid of the double talk and stand with the singularity. Make them merge and make all of the double talk fall to the wayside because the frequency is different. If you add a foreign frequency, you're going to double the language. You're going to double the indication. You're going to double the inference, and you'll have nothing at the end of it but a bunch of double talk. And Allah tells you right in the beginning of the Quran, La rayba fihi. There is no exaggeration. That's what it means. When you add to something that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, you're exaggerating it. If I say, man, you used to be a boxer in my day, man, if Ali was in his prime, man, I could have handled Ali. And you ain't stepped in the gym in 40 years. And you're still in your 30s. Yeah, you know good and well you couldn't have done nothing with Muhammad Ali. You're exaggerating. When people exaggerate, they call it being big chested. They flexing. Well, when you flex physically, your ribs expand. See, when you walk around big chested, like Iblis was, you can't hold that position for long. As soon as people stop looking at you, but when people are looking at you, the Quran calls it being puffed up with pride. That's what he says about Iblis. He was puffed up with pride. But when you do that, your ribs expand to accommodate that amount of air. Now listen, la rayba fihi, la rib, rayba, rib. Rib is anything that can expand beyond its normal boundaries. Whether it's the idea of yourself, of course, that's connected to the human ego. Whether it's your over emotionality on issues and subjects and people and all of that. And you've heard people come to you and talk about other people, and you say, well, that's not my experience with him. Why are you having such a bad time? Because they're exaggerating.